President Muhammadu Buhari, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osibanjo SAN, GCON, Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Chief Justice of the Federation, Deputy President of the Senate, and the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, principal officers of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, distinguished senators and honor members of the House of Representatives, the chairman of the All Progressives Congress, the APC, and the National Working Committee members present, Excellencies, the governors here present, the Chief of Staff to Mr. President, the Secretary to Government of the Federation, members of the Federal Executive Council, Head of Civil Service of the Federation, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Chairman of the National Assembly Service Commission, Engineer Ahmed Amshi, and his commissioners, Clerk to the National Assembly, Deputy Clerk to the National Assembly, Clerk Senate, and Clerk House of Representatives, Secretaries of Directorates, National Assembly, Head of Security Agencies present, Head of Federal Agencies and Parastatals, National Assembly Management Staff, invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, on behalf of my distinguished and honorable colleagues, I welcome you and your entourage to the 4th joint session of the 9th National Assembly for the presentation of the 2023 Appropriation Bill. Mr. President, this joint session is going to be the last session for the 9th National Assembly to receive the budget estimates for consideration and passage. I will seize this opportunity to commend the 9th National Assembly and the executive arm of government for a very productive partnership and collaboration that have helped to ensure the return of the budget cycle from January to December. Your Excellency, last year, Thursday, 7th October 2021, you laid before this August Assembly the 2022 Appropriation Bill, which was the third in the life of this 9th National Assembly. Today, history is repeating itself. 7th October, the same date, 2022, as last year, you will be laying the 2023 Appropriation Bill. I commend you, therefore, for being timely every year in the last 3 years to allow before the end of the year so that it can be signed into law before the beginning of the new year. It is a record that 2020, 2021, and 2022 appropriation bills were considered and passed before the end of the last 3 years. Distinguished senators and honor members are similarly committed to ensuring the consideration and passage of the 2023 appropriation bill before the end of this year by the grace of God. The benefits of the early passage and subsequent implementation of the budget have helped in the provision of infrastructure and other services across the country. Mr. President, our economy is still challenged by dearth of revenues. The main source of revenue to the Nigerian government is oil and gas. We always consider the diversification of our economy as crucial, and it is indeed crucial. The idea of deploying our revenues from the oil and gas to support the diversification into real sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, mining, etc. is now under serious threat. the large-scale and massive stealing of our oil is concerning, as this reduces drastically the revenues available to the government. With conflicting figures, projections have put our losses from this melee at between 700,000 to 900,000 barrels of crude oil per day, leading to about 29 to 35% losses in oil revenue in the first quarter of 2022. This represents an estimated total fall from 1.1 trillion naira recorded in the last quarter of 2021 to 790 billion naira in the first quarter of this year. The situation has worsened. Recently, the loss of our oil has reached 1 million barrels per day. Translated into monetary terms, our loss is monumental and deleterious. The figures show we are not able to meet the OPEC daily quota of 1.8 million barrels per day for our country. Mr. President, I consider the oil thieves the worst enemies of our country. The thieves have declared war on our country and our people. I strongly feel that we need to take the necessary measures to stop the thieves immediately. Otherwise, our economy will be completely devastated. Also, our efforts to provide the necessary infrastructure and diversification of the economy would both be thwarted. It is time to take drastic and desperate measures against the thieves. Mr. President, the situation becomes more unfortunate if we factor in the budget deficit estimated at 7 trillion naira and the green prospect of its increase to about 11.3 trillion naira as presented in the 2023-2025 medium-term expenditure framework fiscal strategy paper. Your Excellency, we can reduce the deficit by stopping the theft. We can also consider other options to source more revenues for government. I believe that it is imperative to review the waivers and concessions government has granted to the tune of 6 trillion naira. In a difficult time like this, some of these waivers may no longer be justified. In the same vein, we should consider taking off some of the major revenue-generating agencies from direct funding by placing them on cost of collection of revenues, as we did for Federal Inland Revenue Service, FRS, Nigeria Customs Service. In this regard, agencies like Nigeria Ports Authority, NPA, Nigeria Communications Commission, NCC, Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, etc., can be given encouraging cost of collections of revenues. The National Assembly Committees on Finance and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning should jointly look into this matter immediately. The condition will require courageous fiscal policy to redress by reducing the deficit, not just to avoid further increases in our debts, but to ensure macroeconomic stability, grow confidence in the system, and guarantee sustainable economic growth. The National Assembly will support policy frameworks geared towards prudence, transparency, and accountability through rigorous appropriation. Mr. President, this administration has been consistent in ensuring the delivery of landmark infrastructure across the country. The last 3 budgets have made generous provisions for different projects. While some have been completed, work on others are ongoing at high paces. The 2023 budget should therefore focus on completing a lot more of those projects. Mr. President, I strongly believe that the 2023 budget should target at completion of ongoing projects, especially our legacy projects. This not only because of the importance of infrastructure to the stimulation of economic activities, but also to entrench the efforts as a legacy of this administration. Our focus on this sector has been exemplary, and the benefit to our growth and development cannot be overstated. Mr. President, we note the government drive to address the impact of climate change and reverse its effect. Though complicated and dynamic, we should not rest on our oars in dealing with issues like floods, drying wetlands, desertification, and coastline erosions. The menace of flooding in many parts of our country has been particularly worrisome. It has devastated homes and disrupted families, lives, and livelihoods. We'll need to take proactive measures to tackle this, and especially manage our dams and other water bodies to curtail the menace of flooding now becoming a national disaster. Our focus and targets should be on how to prevent these annual floods from occurring in the scale that we experience annually. This year, the floods have not only devastated families, but also destroyed our infrastructure, roads particularly. Mr. President, as you may be aware, work on the renovation of the National Assembly has begun in earnest. This is why we are in this temporary facility. Government should ensure timely completion of the renovation of the National Assembly complex because of the significance of this arm of government to good governance and the sustenance of our democracy. Aside from the National Assembly, by the way, Mr. President, let me thank you very much. When we approached you, my brother, the Honorable Speaker, about the need to rehabilitate and renovate this National Assembly complex, you did not waste any time. You gave the marching order to then Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari, that sources of funds must be identified to immediately start the renovation. Aside from the National Assembly complex and chamber, there are also the National Assembly Service Commission complex, the National Assembly Library, and the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies complex. These projects are integral to the smooth functioning of legislative work, which is why we will need to pay attention to the completion of those projects. Mr. President, from the assessment of the prevailing situation, our security agencies are recording more successes and the situation is improving. In pushing for concerted efforts toward ridding our nation of criminals, the National Assembly will continue to support the executive arm of government in finding permanent solutions to insecurity in our country. Let me at this point commend our defense and security forces for working harder. There is still some work to be done though. Mr. President, be rest assured that the single senators and honor members of the 9th National Assembly will once more begin work on the 2023 budget immediately. As usual, we shall be guided by an utmost sense of duty, responsibility, equity, fairness, justice, and patriotism in the interest of posterity. On this note, it is now my singular honor and privilege to invite His Excellency, Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, to present the 2023 budget estimates to the joint session of the National Assembly. Thank you all for your kind attention. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.